Hi, my name is James Young. I'm going to be talking to you today about technologies that shaped America in the 20th century. I chose the time period right after Civil War in the 1920s. I really enjoy history, and I found some interesting things. And the four that I will be talking about today are going to be the automobile, the airplane, the telephone, and the air conditioning. First, I'd like to start off with the automobile. The first blueprints were drawn up by Leonardo da Vinci and Isaac Newton, and ultimately over the years there's been over 10,000 patents created that helped create the first automobile. The actual first automobile that was designed and created kind of like the way we know automobiles was done in 1885. There were some automobiles done before this period, but they weren't exactly how we know them. They used steam, and this is the first gas automobile that we know as of today. The next person I'd like to talk about, the automobile, everyone knows Henry Ford. He was kind of like the visionary that, it wasn't really invented, the automobile, but what he did more along the lines, he helped mass produce the automobiles. He created an automobile for the everyday user, the customer, the worker. He thought more along the lines. Before that, it was more only the rich and could have it. So he introduced his automobile in about 1903, and then he obviously did it for the working man. He introduced the Model T in 1908. He basically, the assembly line, he became the world's largest car manufacturer in his time period, and he had over 15 million Model Ts created. The next one I'd like to talk about is airplanes. Obviously, airplanes help shape everything, because nowadays if you want to travel to Dallas, you're not, and some people might drive in their automobiles, but it's so much easier to get in an airplane and go there in 30 minutes, where go across the country. But it's an interesting note about that. Wilbur and Orville and Wilbur Wright were the first, obviously, to do the successful flight. But right before they did it, the first time they did it on December 14th, 1903, they flipped a coin to see who was going to go. And I thought that was interesting, because they're like, oh, well, they both wanted to do it, so they flipped a coin, and the winner the first time, obviously, it was Wilbur, and the second time was Orville, and that was done in December 17th, and then they both eventually did the flights. That flight only lasted for about 12 seconds and covered 120 feet. That's not very far, but they were, it was the first step. And how did the airplanes impact everything? Obviously, like I said, traveling from point A to point B, it got a lot easier. You can go further in a shorter period of time. It gave men the ability to fly, which is big, because every human has always dreamed about flying, so this gave them the ability to do that. Next is the telephone. Yes, nowadays everyone uses cell phones, but if this didn't happen, we wouldn't have any cell phones. It was developed by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876, and basically it gave them the ability to send a signal, transmit your speech through a signal, and it pretty much took off. Once he did it, it took off, and he had over 50,000 telephones in the United States once it took off. This allowed people to communicate across country. It made business, obviously, it helped with the industrial time, because around this time, that's when everything started growing. So it helped with that, because they can communicate, they can get shipments, ordered, and with all the other, like the automobile and all that other stuff going around, they were able to travel, and then by train and everything, it allowed them to communicate better. Now, the air conditioning, why in the world did I not do the TV? Yes, obviously the TV was great, but we live in Texas, and it's hot. So this invention is very, very important to us, I think, because without this, we'd be sweating right now. So it was invented in 1902 by Willis Carrier. Obviously, everyone's heard of the Carrier air conditioning. It made it possible to control temperatures in a confined space. Obviously, air conditioning, thank you. It was made to, they did it to originally store foods and stuff like that. Eventually it caught on and the businesses got it, and then eventually it went into the homes and then in the air conditioning, into the cars, the vehicles. So these are my 4 favorite, or not favorite, I want to say, these are my 4 inventions that I discussed. Do y'all have any questions?
How many colors did Ford use on their cars when they first came?
It was mostly black. The majority of their cars were black. It wasn't like nowadays where they had all the different colors. They basically, Ford invented the car to get to point A to point B, and that was basically what his vision was. Obviously, it's changed a lot since then, but that's kind of where it started off at, that starting point.
Okay, so which of the 4 technologies interest you the most and why?
Well, let's see. The technology that interests me the most, obviously, the automobile, because I like to travel. I like to fly to places, but there's something about getting in a vehicle and having, you know, rolling down your windows and going down the road and your hair, and the wind hitting your hair, and you feel free. And to me, I think that one's impacted everybody, because not everybody can learn how to fly a plane, but everybody knows how to drive an automobile. To me, that's my favorite.
Good, thank you.
Anyone? Any other questions? Anybody? Thank you. That's it.
Yay!